10 years ago, the paintball marker market was very different from now. The case is, before this time, companies would either focus on making high ends or low ends. It was rare to see a well-made and affordable mid-range marker, and very few companies managed to pull it off. The guns to set the standard were also the kings of their time. It started with the proto matrices that shot like die matrices and proved to be a serious marker for a mid-range price. Then the Etek followed, doing the same in relationship to the Ego. Then the NXT shockers came, the same marker that set the foundation for the Lux. The thing is, the line was somewhat blurred with the NXT shocker.
We'll just put the shocker there because that's the gun with the worst first shot drop off.
Well, the NXT shocker...
Things I'm gonna have to zoom in here. One of the reasons why I think shockers break paint more than just about any other gun is because of the amount of rollback that the breech has. So that's one of my biggest problems with the shocker is that the boards that come in are garbage. I mean, they're just junk. I mean, they're worst boards on the market. So then what do you do with it? What do you do with the stock nerve board? Well, you do what I do. You take the piece, you break it in half like this. You take it, put it in the trash, and you go and buy yourself a gun from a real company that supports their customers and is not trying to pull this shit to fuck you out another $120.
How should I put this?
For about the same price, and around the same time period, the Xbox 360 was released, and these machines had something very special in common, and that little thing was reliability. Now, if you excuse me, I have something to take care of. You stupid piece of crap. Reliability is important to me, and that is what Eclipse is offering to the market is all about. Reliability. The Gtek is designed to be a reliable gun. It's designed to be a gun that every time you pull a trigger, is gonna shoot. Next time you get a red ring of death on me, it's gonna be a lot worse than paintballs, buddy.
Piece of crap.
Now, let's seriously get into this review. The first question to ask is obviously...
With the box! What's in the box? What's in the box? What's in the box?
Well, Brad, as far as the packaging goes, no one has been able to beat Eclipse. Well, not yet. Not even for their mid-range guns. In the box, you get a hard case tailored to perfectly fit its contents. Those are a high-quality Allen key set with those nice ball ends that let you work on screws in tough angles, and they're nicer on screws overall. Eclipse's grease, the best barrel stock that comes with any gun, a very extensive rebuild kit that covers every millimeter of the gun, a manual that goes over everything about the marker. Plus, it points out that there's a maintenance section online, where the lead engineer himself, Jack Wood, sits down to show you, the user, how to properly maintain the Gtek. You also get what is, in essence, a Shaft 5, just that it has a bit different external milling and a different porting layout, but other than that, it's the same top-notch mirror-hone finish inside, the same cocker quick threads, and the same shaft threads if you want to interchange tips or backs.
And you get your Gtek. Something I really like about the Gtek, in fact, it's my favorite thing, is actually related to this sticker right here. You see, I'll read it to you just so you get it. Careless or improper use, including failure to follow instructions in the operator's manual. And basically, yeah, it says something about safety, but what it tells you is that by owning a Gtek, you become the operator. Therefore, you become operator.
A funny thing about the Gtek's release is, if you look back at the Etha's release, at first people were calling it a Gtek.
A lot of people are looking at this and saying that it's a Gtek.
This is the Gtek. Yes, it's out. No, just kidding. No, this is the Etha.
It is not a Gtek.
Now with the release of the Gtek, some people were thinking it was a second Etha. Well, let me just... It doesn't shoot like an Etha.
I think I made my point, and it's that the Gtek is a really fun gun to shoot. When you look at the Etha, the thing is, that gun was designed to put paint in the air. It wasn't designed to feel like a tournament-grade marker, but the Gtek is built on the inside like a tournament-grade marker.
The regulators that Eclipse use are all the same regulators for the high ends and for their low end Etha and for their mid-range Gteks and Eteks. So what really makes the Gtek perform like a high end is its drivetrain, the Gamma Core. And it borrows a lot of things from the Geo, but it doesn't stop being its own thing, if that makes sense. So as you can see, the bolt is shorter than the bolt on a Geo. It's on a bolt guide, and in the Geo the prop shaft is the bolt guide. And we have a shuttling system that we'll see what this does actually in the animation. So let's take a look at the Gtek animation that the folks from Eclipse have created for us to look at, and just to see how the Gtek is similar and different to the Geos, and see how it's unique in its own way and how it works, and to understand how it works, because there's a lot going on. So let's slow it down and take a look at the first step of the firing process, which is the solenoid actuation. When the solenoid actuates, it vents the air behind the switch that holds the switch in position. You see, when the switch slides back, the entire firing process is started. So the solenoid vents, and the switch's air, the air behind the switch is vented, so the air from the main valve drives the switch back along with the spool. This breaks the seal in the bolt guide and allows air to rush into the bolt guide and slide the bolt forward with a lot of force to overcome any kind of bolt stick, but not violently, so that it's gentle on paint. So then it clears the bolt guide and blasts the air from the valve to shoot the paintball. But while this is happening, the spool harnesses some of the back pressure created by the ball and closes the valve and saves about 30 to 40 psi for the next shot. And that's how the Gtek is so efficient. And after this, the solenoid reactuates, pushes the switch back to position, and gets ready for the next shot. Here we see it side by side with an IV core, and you can see after the shot, it uses the back pressure to close the valve, and that's the key thing it borrows from Geos.
This is especially noticeable when comparing it to other spool valve guns. If you recall the video we made with the Shocker and Gtek, you can see that the Gtek leaves a bit of a mist at the end of the muzzle or the barrel after each shot, while the Shocker keeps blowing. This is because the Shocker is using air even after the ball has left the barrel. And the Gtek is obviously not blowing that mist away because the valve is closed.
Now some of you might be asking, wait, if the Gtek performs like a high-end, then why is it a mid-range marker? And the simple answer to that is to answer what a mid-range marker is. And a mid-range marker is a combination of pro-level parts and entry-level parts, or high-end and low-end, and hence mid-range. So with the Gtek, you get a high-end drivetrain, so it shoots like a high-end, but it has composite parts, it has macro line, it has a basic LED board, and I've upgraded to the OLED because why not?
And that is what makes the Gtek a mid-range marker. I'll give you another example. This is the Axe Pro. The Axe Pro has an all-aluminum design, it has a high-end trigger, it has an OLED, but it has the drivetrain of a gun that's around $300. So that's what makes this a mid-range gun. Does this mean that the Axe Pro is bad because it has the drivetrain of a Mini? No. Does this mean the Gtek is bad because it uses a frame similar to what you find on the ETHA and Macroline? No. It just means that those were the compromises made for you to pay less for that gun.
The build of the marker consists of aluminum and GRN, like the frame, eye covers, feed neck, ASA knob. And yeah, it's composite, but it's pretty sturdy actually. Don't be one of those guys that doesn't use GRN even in a life or death situation.
No te muevas, no te muevas. ¿Qué tú tienes contigo? Dame un billetera y celular. Es un
Composite? Because the truth of it actually is that when you're on the field making 12-year-olds miserable, that's the last thing going through your mind. The composite part setup on the Gtek is pretty straightforward. If you look at Eclipse's past markers, it's pretty much identical. Your Oops ASA knob, or Oops ASA knob, is composite, and it's really easy to turn. If you look inside, the mechanism in there is pretty much just like a Pops, except that you screw it down, not push it down. And something to note about this is if you're running a really high pressure, like above 800 PSI, you could struggle a bit turning this. But lower than that, it really is no problem. You also have a composite frame, composite eye covers, a composite back cap that you can just pull out, and your composite feed neck. It holds loaders pretty well. You can actually turn the lever with the composite version of these, so it doesn't have the thumb screw, but you can still modify it without using tools, which is nice. Something else about the feed neck is that it's a Tek feed neck, meaning it's an offset feed neck to the left side. And what this does is basically allow the balls to roll into the breech, not fall into the breech. In my early days with the Gtek, I did get a few ball breaks due to breech bounce. And what's basically happening is when I was running out of paint in the loader and was using tiny paint, what would happen is I was trying to shoot fast and the loader would throw those balls down the breech. And as soon as the eyes read that ball, it would fire. What would happen is, as the ball fell, since it was so small the Tek couldn't really have an effect on it, it would bounce and slightly hang a bit out of the breech, and obviously when the bolt cycled, it would slice that ball and it would break. But ever since I was aware of the problem, I've avoided it and haven't had it happen since. The Gtek's rubber grips are extremely comfortable to use. You see, they're not your traditional gummy grips, and actually I've noticed that those kind of wear out in hot weather. And these, on your first impressions, you'll notice that they're not squishy, but the way they achieve stickiness is through abrasion, not through gumminess. So when you're holding this, you'll notice that your hands are going to be sticking to the rubber, and that's not because of stickiness, that's because of friction. So the best way to put it is these grips, these dual textured grips that they've been using on the Etek 5, the CS1, and now the Gtek, are basically allowing your hand to drag across the rubber and not slide, therefore providing a stable grip. Something I really like about the Gtek is how easy it points. You just line yourself up and the tip of the barrel is going to align perfectly with your nose, so wherever you're looking is where you're shooting. And it's extremely easy to engage opponents with no problem. Crap! Well, you see, the Gtek, and it's just quick on the draw. You see, there's this other guy on the other side. He's got no idea what's coming at him.
But in all seriousness, yes, it does really point that well, and it is extremely quick on the draw. exactly like the Etek 5, and the Etek 5 is one of the best pointing guns in paintball, especially for the price. The way the rubber grips and the stretched out feel just combine, it makes it extremely easy to point the gun. And the Gtek is exactly like that, which is no surprise since they're in the same family of markers.
With all these things in mind, it's pretty safe to say that the Gtek is a gunfighter's dream, right? One more thing, we have to see how it measures up in the chrono and see how well it actually puts paint in the air. So let's go. Shot-to-shot consistency is pretty solid. Let's see how it maintains a burst. We had plus or minus 6.4.
Definitely some pretty good consistency for some paint that really wasn't in the best condition. This was quite evident as I was making my Axe Pro jump around in velocity as well. So far, I've showered the Gtek with praise, and it's deserved every bit of that. But it's not a gun without its shortcomings, and I want to point out that out of the box, I wasn't 100% happy with the trigger. It wasn't bad out of the box, but it definitely took some time and modification for me to be happy with it, and now I am happy with it. I should also note that by design it has a little bit of side-to-side play. This is to prevent the trigger from grinding with the composite frame, which is most people's main complaint with the composites anyway, so good on you guys, Eclipse. That's actually a pretty smart approach. It's only got a bit of side-to-side play, and the trigger doesn't grind with the frame, so I'm happy with that. But the other thing is the board. Regardless if you have the OLED or not, the board is pretty simple. And basically what I want to get to is that it's just a frac. It's not a bad board. In fact, it works very well, and what it does perfectly. It really has everything you need, but you want more, is what I'm trying to say. And this board is just a fraction of what Eclipse's high-end boards are. And once you've used those, you know what I mean. Oh, hi. You guys are still there. Well, sorry about that. Corn dog is an unusual meal, isn't it? So as I mentioned in the start, reliability is pretty important to me, and the Gtek's Drivetrain does that pretty well. It shoots in any conditions: cold weather, hot weather, wet weather, muddy conditions. To put it in another perspective, to me, the Gtek is kind of like the Glock of paintball. There's a lot of similarities between them. They're both affordable, they're both reliable, they're both high performance, and they're both a mixture of metal and composite parts. I'm just saying, if Napoleon or the Germans had Gteks when they were trying to invade Russia, it would have been a very different story. Just kidding. Anyway, what would happen with my Gtek is when I fired, sometimes it would puff and wouldn't shoot. And sometimes when it did fire, the number 6 seal in the solenoid would blast out after venting the air behind the switch. See? That's why we learn how our guns work. And I read about Eclipse's promise in the manual, and I said, hey, let's give it a shot. Got in contact with Eclipse, wrote up in PB Nation, see if anyone could help out, and sure enough, the guys from Eclipse responded, and let me tell you, they do not like it when a gun isn't working. They really helped me out with getting my Gtek back in working order. As a matter of fact, due to the rarity of the issue, the person who gave me customer support on behalf of Eclipse was Jack Wood himself, the guy that designs these guns. And the support was phenomenal. They sent me an entire gamma core assembly, an entire solenoid assembly, and some other parts, some O-rings for me to try out. And in the end, the Gtek works fine now, and I was very satisfied with that customer support. And you pay for that in the $550 price tag on the gun, you pay for that. It's in the manual, it's part of the package. So it's really good support that comes from Eclipse. I wasn't charged a thing for a solenoid and a gamma core, and I'm guessing those are the most intricate parts of the gun, so I'm very pleased with Planet Eclipse's customer support. And I'll put it like this, as a word of advice for you all: register your guns as soon as you get them, because it at the long run, it doesn't hurt you and can only help you out. And in my case, that's exactly what happened, and I have a working gun. As simple as that.
As we mentioned in the start, the mid-range marker market has been setting new standards ever since it was started to be taken seriously by different companies. It really started with the proto matrices that at heart were matrices and gave you a taste of what a die matrix was. And the Eteks did the same with the Ego. They gave you a taste of what an Ego was. And the same as with the Etek 5, it gives you a taste of what the LV1 is. And really, after the Shocker, disregarding the Etek, most of the guns that would set the standard in the mid-range market were actually brought up low ends. And I'll set the example, the reflex rail having the exact same drivetrain as the regular rail. We have the Axe that was an upgraded Mini. A marker that has followed that trend is the new Shocker that is basically a beefed up Ion. And MacDev's drones as well. And yes, MacDev doesn't make entry-level markers, but you can definitely tell that those drivetrains on those guns are pretty simple, and they focus on the exterior build. And that really is the trade-off with a mid-range marker. And what the Eteks and Gteks now do, it sort of alludes to the past. And the Eclipse approach is definitely something I wish was the new standard. What they do is they take their high ends and they bring it down to give you a taste what they are. The Etek does a fantastic job giving you a taste of what an LV1 is, and the Gtek does a fantastic job at giving you a taste of what the Geo is. It's not quite like a Geo, but it gives you a taste of what it would be like if you were to have a Geo. And that's what I think is so fantastic about these guns. And why really they're my first choice when it comes to mid-range markers. And my verdict for the Gtek is this: it's a taste of what a Geo is. And the Geo is easily the most dominant marker in the NXL right now. So if you were to give the Gtek an aluminum frame, a POPS ASA, an AT pipe, the multiple adjustment trigger with the opto switch and the micro switch, and the magnet and the spring, and you were to give the Gtek Eclipse's high-end board, and you were to modify the drivetrain so that it would work with an SFR to adjust bolt speed, well, you have a Geo, and that's the best way to put it. The Gtek is a taste of a Geo.